Let's be careful not to make any more children. I know
En
you
fin,
just had a child. Well,
poner punto final a la... Tenemos una mesa redonda, pero antes
we do have a round table, but before that, we have one more presentation. Alfonso Vergara Gómez, the President of the Metropolis Foundation and advisor for governments and global cities. He has a PhD in urbanism, and he's received many awards from the European Union. He's worked on strategies for urbanism, and he's going to talk to us today about smart territories. Welcome, and thank you for coming to Tenerife. We're excited to hear what you have to say.
Sí. Muy bien. Bueno, pues en primer lugar, muchísimas gracias por
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me to this event. There's really an amazing standard among the speakers here. I'm sure that we will take a lot of inspiration away for the future of this city. So, smart territories. This title you see is the title of my most recent book. Super cities, I'm not referring to super in size, I'm referring to super intelligence. When a city uses AI and digital technology, it can improve many things, electric consumption, habitability, etc. But ultimately, human intelligence is also important. Leadership, vision, the ability to create this this polyamorous conditions. So AI is super intelligence, which applied to cities is super cities, which goes one step further than the traditional smart cities. I want to share with you the experience of the Metropolis Foundation over the last couple of decades in different cities around the world. It was created in Pennsylvania University. This sentence that you can see here was what inspired us to create this foundation 25 years ago. A culture of innovation is key for sustainability, and so our foundation is a center of design for the cities of the future. This eco-box is our headquarters in Madrid. It's an experimental building and saves 71% energy compared to a traditional building. We have a cities project. We chose 20 cities, and we wanted to find out why some were prosperous and others were less so. We wanted to find why certain transformative projects were successful in some cities and not in others. We collaborated with 20 different universities, with governors, mayors, and urbanism departments in the universities in each of these cities. So the conclusions from this global study are collected in this book about territorial intelligence. We now have an alliance with UN Habitat and the UNWTO to work on implementing and achieving these sustainable development goals. The practical implementation of these SDGs is what we're looking to achieve. We have been working on specific projects in many different parts of the world, and right now we have a great opportunity to work alongside the City Council of Santa Cruz with support from the institutions you see here on the screen. I'm sure more institutions will join forces with this project in the future. You are very familiar with this territory, but we've had to get to know it. And we really have observed that we live in a very systemic world. So the city of Santa Cruz is part of an island system. There are a series of connections and opportunities represented here. There is a system of cities, and there are two key cities here on the map that deserve to be connected. There needs to be a strategic connection between these two cities, which will allow it to develop its competencies at a global level. There is water separating these two cities, but they need to share port, airport, services, universities. There needs to be a complementary system between these two urban centers. We've called this the blue route, the route that goes across the water. And I think there is huge potential here to make this a territorial diamond, let's say, and to become a point of reference internationally. So location is key, and look at where we are. We're in Europe, but also in Africa. And Africa is an emerging continent. China, Russia are investing in Africa and other countries too. So our archipelago has a great opportunity to share our experiences in different sectors with these emerging territories. There are lots of possibilities here with these countries, perhaps more than the opportunities that exist with countries in the north of Europe. Let's look at Tenerife then now specifically. It's a very densely populated island, almost double that of other islands in the archipelago, almost 1 million inhabitants. There is a certain critical mass, mostly due to its tourism activity. This is the evolution of our population. You can see that Tenerife has had greater population growth than Spain, but in Santa Cruz there has been a slight decrease in population over the same time frame. This image shows the natural spaces on the island, which are amazing. And here we can see the white points denoting the urban zones. One of the big urban problems we've talked about here is how they're very scattered. There are problems with connecting all of the different parts of this urban area. Here we can see the relief of the landscape, the different altitudes, the different ecosystems, and each with their own climate conditions. So this has created our different metropolitan areas. And of course, this shows the relational accessibility. We can see all of the roads that exist across the island, and we can see that these settlements are located along these key lines. There's something that could help to inspire the future of the city, and that is looking at the size, the limits of Santa Cruz, the administrative or the functional limits. This is an isochrone study that shows that within a 10-minute distance, we have more than 300,000 inhabitants. In a 20-minute travel time, 470,000 inhabitants, and 30 minutes travel time includes over 600,000 inhabitants. So this urban reality represents a complex metropolis, which is hard to define. Let's look at all of the Spanish cities. Santa Cruz is located in 28th position in terms of its inhabitants. But if we take into account the 600,000 inhabitants that live within a 30-minute distance, we are in 6th position. So this is a complex urban situation, and it requires a complex analysis. So I think what I'm trying to say is we need to take into account this wider context, not just the center of these municipal areas. So if we apply this space syntax analysis to the city, we can see red, the high connectivity areas, and blue, the low connectivity. So there are areas we can see here that are quite central, but have very poor connectivity. This is one of the most complicated challenges to address in urbanism. And it requires a great deal of hard work to find solutions. You can see the airport there. You can see the coastline, the morphology, etc. And now we can see the ravines that surround the city. This is something unique to Santa Cruz. It is surrounded by these ravines. And then we have here the traditional industrial areas. Some of them are no longer in use. These are industrial zones that are no longer as relevant to the metropolitan area. Some of them are inside the city of Santa Cruz, some are closer to La Laguna. We have to think about the future of these spaces. And then there is this interface between the city and the port. You can see the very wide extension of this port area. There are areas that are very interesting to look at. So we have the Teresita's beach here, one of the most emblematic and cherished parts of the city. And then we have the container ports, the cruise terminal. These all sit along this line that we just saw. And then we have the South Quay, the area of the refinery, going all the way down to the Añaza coastline. So there's a huge opportunity, a huge challenge there to take down the barriers along this line and link the port with the city. I think there's a whole host of opportunities there. We should look at it as an opportunity, not a problem. So, for instance, when it comes to diversifying university options, strengthening airports and airports links, cultural options, attracting talent, all these things work better with a certain critical mass and territorial identity. We're realizing more and more that cities need a project for the city, for the metropolitan area, and for the island as well. Thinking about strategic options, look here at the international maritime flows. The blue ports represent lower intensity. 80% of world trade takes place in the sea. And you can see here some very important trade flows that pass by the islands, the Canary Islands, so we can utilize this strategic location with our ports. In Las Palmas, there is almost double the cargo that goes through Santa Cruz de Tenerife.
la potencia que tienen Las Palmas para liderar el tema portuario.
In Algeciras, there is almost 5 times that goes through Las Palmas. When it comes to airports, there is a lot more passing through Tenerife than Gran Canaria, on the other hand. Tenerife, the North Airport, has more connections to the mainland, but the South Airport is connected with practically every European country, practically all of the most innovative countries in Europe. So all of these tourism links could also be used for other productive sectors. So having a critical mass will help to ensure the growth of these two cities, to have a point of reference in Europe next to Africa, to be able to contribute to this emerging territory, which is Africa, which really has a huge potential. So, I'd like to share with you now, bearing in mind these challenges that I've just described, some reflections from our foundation. I want to share with you some inspirational projects. For instance, Singapore, also an island. Almost 20 years ago, they decided that it was critical for the future of the city to attract talent. They established this One North project. The idea was to create one place to attract talent to. Look at the island of Singapore. It's almost less than half the size of Tenerife, but it has 6.5 million inhabitants. In Singapore, and look at this, this is a scale, these are scaled images, so you can see to scale the size of Singapore and the size of Tenerife. There was an experiment there called One North. So it was a project that dealt with 200 hectares. There was a big difference between the urbanism, the urban approach inside this plot of land and that outside. It was a very short project in European standards, and all of the colors you can see here represent different land uses with different approaches in terms of urbanism and architecture. It involved all kinds of different actors who worked together. This led to a hybrid design and an urbanism which focused on public spaces, which would serve for the exchange of ideas. The architecture delimited this public space. And this is the opposite of environment urbanism. Como tradicionalmente se hacen los planes parciales en España, en Europa, se trazan los viarios, están las parcelas. In Europe, what we often do is draw out the roadways and then divide up plots of land for the buildings, but the public spaces aren't the forefront of those designs, whereas this project did things the other way around. So, this refinery project really should focus a great deal on the design stage so that there can be a confluence of different actors and uses there. The project was inspired in historical cities like Vitoria in the Basque Country. 50,000 people are working in this territory now. There are 3 clusters: biotechnology, multimedia, and urban solutions. So that's the experience of One North, and the key takeaways are Think about this idea of hybrid urbanism, places where you can live, work, learn, enjoy, with a very specific economic orientation. So these three clusters, as I said, biotechnology and others. So Singapore has become a living laboratory. The port, the airport, the traffic regulation programs, social programs, ecological parks of the future, like One North, that attract talent, that attract investment, all work together to sell Singapore. They have a higher GDP per capita than Spain, 3 times that of Spain's, in fact. But in the past, it was lower than Spain's. Nowadays, their main export is offering their experiences in design for tourism, transport, logistical centers, ports, airports. And as I said before, Africa has a huge potential. All of these ports in these projects in Singapore have focused on connectivity and their capacity to attract talent. This issue of connectivity, then, is absolutely key. What are Singapore's projects for the future? They're going to extend the airport, a 5th terminal. They have a port in the center of the city that they're going to move, and this port area will become the financial hub. Then there was going to be a high-speed train station that will connect with Kuala Lumpur, 300 kilometers away. And with this high-speed train network, there will be the creation of a whole new district. This yellow line that you can see is called Orchard Road. This is an experiment in commerce. 13 million tourists every year go shopping there. But nowadays, as e-commerce is destroying our shopping centers in the rest of the world, how is it possible for this in-person shopping to be so alive there? The way they've done it is by focusing on experiential shopping. It's an interesting project. So, physical design and technology, digital technology. This is what we call a smart station. You can see here we're focusing on mobility, energy, among many other things, to try to ensure that there is a comprehensive approach in the whole territory. Here you can see the island of Singapore in 1990, 1950, 1990. And look at this image 20 years later. Singapore has grown outside of Singapore. So let's think about Tenerife now. The upper part of this image is Malaysia, and the lower part is Indonesia. Batam is around 1,000 kilometers squared, and we've designed a project for the Bintan Island. Their goal is to receive this overflow, this extra growth of Singapore. I encourage you to check out this project. It's very interesting. The government of Indonesia then would like these islands to become the Silicon Valley of Indonesia. In much the same way, it's vital that there are functional connections, complementary systems between all of these islands so that they can become a diamond node. One of the other sources of inspiration that we think could be interesting for Tenerife is Barcelona, although it's a much bigger city. Barcelona has a port and a city that are very connected, and we have a similar challenge here. You can see here our port in Santa Cruz and Barcelona's port. This is an isochrone study, and within a 45-minute travel area, we have around 45 million. We have millions of people that are within a 45-minute travel distance from the center of the city. And so, let's look at the port here. Some parts of it, the urban ports, are much more integrated with the city, and others are still very industrial. There are also important natural spaces like Montjuic, which is very close to the heavy industrial area, but nevertheless is a beautiful natural space, and it's been protected very well. Barcelona has 5 or 6 industrial centers in the heart of the city. It's much the same situation as here. These pink areas are the industrial parts of the metropolitan area. Here we have an area of around 600 hectares. This is called the Zona Franca of Barcelona. It's next to the airport. There's good connections. But there are very low added value activities there, and this so-called duty-free zone would be the translation. In many industrial estates, we could carry out or turn them into the fourth generation district innovation centers. So these are all ideas of how we could convert these industrial centers, which are very well situated, into new hubs of innovation. Here we have an image of the Ramblas in Barcelona, which has deteriorated in the last 15-20 years. A few years ago, it was mostly focused on selling messy football shirts, but recently, a group of private entities have joined together under the slogan Friends of the Rambla, and they have helped to make this area much more creative, renovating rather than expelling the users of these areas. The idea is to create this creative, innovative digital district connecting the Gothic and the Raval neighborhoods on either side of the Ramblas. These are other coastal areas of Barcelona that have had similar transformation projects. They tend to all be sitting along the coastline. Another interesting project in Spain, which should be taken into account, is Bilbao. Bilbao was transformed in the beginning due to a regional project in the Basque Country. But then Bilbao began to differentiate itself from other cities in the Basque Country like Vitoria, etc. We can see here the transformation of the city. It was an industrial city that then went through an urban transformation in the 80s, and nowadays it is going through a transition towards a knowledge society. We can see images here of around 30 years ago what the city looked like, and this is what it looks like today. They have spent 10 times more money cleaning that river than transforming the urban infrastructure of the city itself. But in 25 years, it completely transformed the city. The City Council worked on improving the urban spaces, and they were followed by many, many private entities who also invested in architectural projects. We can see here this link once again between mobility and urbanism, and also the quality of public spaces. The area of the ensanches is now becoming a digital district in the city. The former mayor, Iñaki Azcuna, had a dream that he always talked about. He wanted Bilbao to be a complete city, not a city with a center and a periphery, a city that the whole world loved, but that was disconnected. So what they did was ensure that each neighborhood could participate in the decisions being taken regarding public spaces. This is the poorest neighborhood of Bilbao, Roza. They proposed, through the cleaning of that river, even the creation of a beach for the local residents. Each neighborhood has a different identity. Some are more focused on leisure, others restaurants, etc. But they were all connected, and the project was called Neighborhood Hearts. Then there is the issue of the arts. This is the Tenerife Arts Space. In Bilbao, they had around 8 or 10 art galleries that weren't working very well in isolation, so they wanted to create a district of arts. These are examples of cities that have had similar projects. And here we can see the Gran Via and the river. The whole metropolitan area has around 1 million inhabitants. You can see the metro in red and the tram in green. The metro is excellent and very efficient because it is in line with the lines that define the city. Articular los sistemas de transporte colectivo con esta calidad sería mucho más caro, mucho más ineficiente. Y luego también la inserción, como también it's much more challenging to offer public transport to cities that are more sprawling. La inserción del tranvía en la propia ciudad. Ahí surgió, aparte de los galeristas, que todas estas arquitecturas when they were looking at these architectural projects in the arts district, they found that they were all designed, they all had buildings designed by very well-known architects, all winners of the Pritzker Prize. So, they wanted to have more architectural works of art in their arts district. I think that none of this would have been possible if they didn't have a specific management organization, and that was called Bilbao RIA 2000. You can see in different colors there all of the government institutions. Then there was also funding from the regional and the city government. The different political parties managed to agree on the budget, around €1 million. And Renfe, the national train network, gave lands to the project, which helped to make it a success. So we have this general plan, and then the private sector would take a look at the project and see where they could contribute, but also the government would have these boosted these labs. That would be interesting to have. And this is also very much in line with the Spanish experience by Malaga. Malaga Valley is a book. It's already 15 years since it was published. The mayor is still the same one. And I remember talking to the mayor of Malaga, and he had this very clear idea, like Julio, to have this northern light. The northern light of the Malaga's city mayor was, I remember it very clearly, I would like for Malaga to not only be a city that offers touristic services to Torremolinos and Fuengirola or Marbella. I would like for Malaga to become a talent attraction hub for also technology companies and culture. So we started working on that, on Malaga Valley. That was the name of the project. At the beginning, we had a number of technological companies, and at the end, up to 200 technological companies. And that's how the transformation of Malaga project started. One of the main ideas was to renaturalize the city. You can see all the ravines they have in Malaga. It's pretty similar to the ones we can find here. The port is smaller than the one in Tenerife, but it's at the heart of the city. The airport is on the left side, on the side of the river. But that transformation of the port wouldn't have been possible without that vision the mayor transmitted. At the first instance, we were talking with the port authority, and the mission was that the port would work or would be working and functioning properly. They didn't need more cargo. The more cargo they had, the more friction there would be between the port and the city. However, we noticed that 5% of the cargo arriving at Malaga shoreline, the port, was actually from Algeciras. So they decided to rename the port and rename it the Algeciras port. That it would be, they would have the best port in the Mediterranean. And in this way, they were able to irradiate that transformation on the city center to also recover these spectacular monuments we can find all across the city. They have over 70 museums, and also that university, the technological park, where thousands of people are working in Malaga. But one of the key aspects of this success story was connectivity by plane. They have over 130 international destinations, also connectivity with Madrid by train. And that has allowed them to aim for other goals. At the top side, you can see the technological park. It's a few kilometers away from the city, and it's a conventional technological park. However, thanks to that planning, they would be able to connect it very easily to other parts of the region, and they would also be able to renaturalize the river, natural course of the river. They would also be integrating low-cost workshops, golf courses, different elements that will improve connectivity and also connecting to that yellow line, the future of that space with the shoreline that has been more under development recently. So the center of Malaga is not anymore on the shoreline. Here you can see the district point, which was the industrial area in the past. And then we also have this possibility of a logistic part of the city. This is a future vision for Malaga, which comes from a bigger vision. Here you can see how we have over 1.5 million people living at 45 minutes from the center. But Tenerife, this is the scale we're working with. The scale with which we were working with in the past with Malaga was also different. Here you can see a picture of that line by the shoreline with Marbella and that territory. This linear configuration we can also find in this island is an amazing competitive advantage. Maybe it would be interesting to go back to that train model from the past, which is very beneficial. Of course, there are topographic challenges, but it would be beneficial to connect development and mobility. Another idea on how we can diversify touristic economy towards a knowledge economy. This is a project we are carrying out in Bali. That's Bali, what you're seeing on the screen. There are some peaks. The topography is quite different, however, from Tenerife. It's doesn't reach such altitudes, but its landscapes are amazing. You look at the shoreline, at the agricultural landscape, at the different topographic levels, and here we can see its farming, its agriculture. And usually, these urban spaces share the same space as the agricultural ones. It's a tourist attraction, not only a contribution in the sense of growing food or goods. We also see this traditional agriculture, philosophy, religion as a touristic attraction. Of course, gastronomy too. Thanks to that, Bali is internationally famous. However, there are new challenges due to that. They don't know how to organize the energy, how to manage waste. They're being overcrowded. So we have developed or designed Cura Cura Bali, a project here on the lower part. You can see the smaller island close to the airport on the left side. That island is partially natural, but another part is artificial. It's called Cura Cura. It has 500 hectares. And it has a special economic interest according to Bali. We have people analyzing the future of tourism there, different scientific researchers, where they have some sort of tax holiday for 15 years in order to develop that project. So this island has one international fund as its sole owner. And here you can see the coral reef surrounding the area, the beaches, as well as the towns that are already there. And they were wondering about how we could include those towns into future technological parks. That's the holistic vision with all the stakeholders. Now we need to be courageous in order to create innovative spaces that will have the transformative potential and will create wealth. As we're seeing right now, this island, the wealth it's creating or that is staying here is lower than the one we can find in the rest of the country. We can strengthen its strength. And I believe this is quite an important part also regarding connectivity. I thank you very much for your attention. If you want to let me know about any questions, please do so. Thank you.
Gracias, Alfonso. Has clavado los 40 minutos. Interesante repaso por
40 minutes exactly. Thank you so much for reviewing Singapore, Bilbao, Santa Cruz, Málaga, and Bali even. Bali that of course is also facing many challenges because you might need to wait 3 hours in order to make a 40-kilometer